Peace, family, and welcome to another episode of Sins of the Father. I'm your host, Ani I Am, and I thank you for tapping in. Welcome. Today I want to talk about something that I've been noticing about myself, and I've actually noticed it in how I've actually done some things with my children that have made it even more prominent, kind of highlighted it for me. And I want to kind of share that. But before we jump into that, I always want to set boundaries around this episode using words of affirmation. So I want to just say gratitude, empathy, clarity, sincerity, resilience, wisdom, and most importantly and always love. Because love is undefeated. It is undefeated and it will remain undefeated. So I wanted to share that with you guys as we start this episode and we go into it. Because this episode is about acknowledging that we are enough, and how sometimes perfectionism plays out as a shield for being enough. So we get this perception that we got to do everything perfect, or else it's not enough. But then that perfection becomes its own cell. That perfection becomes a box that we put ourselves in. Then when we don't meet that perfection, which is sometimes fleeting, it's like a moving goalpost, then we never feel worthy. And if we don't catch ourselves doing that, then we wind up passing it on, right? So I just want to kind of dive into it a little bit, because it was something that really resonated with me, because like I said, I had a moment with my son this week, and he plays football, and it kind of highlighted that I was doing something that could eventually cause him to not feel validated without certain things, not feeling good enough. You do something, and I remember buying my first house when I was younger, and everybody around me was like, yo, that's dope, man. You're young, you bought a house, you flipping houses, great, blah, blah. This was like coming from the hood. So it was like, it was kind of a big deal. I didn't feel it. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't live in the moment and say, yo, this is dope. Like I did something, like, something worthy of acknowledgement. I just kind of moved past it and said, I got to do something else, because I didn't feel like it was worthy of praise. Why? I don't know. Everybody around me believed that it was, but I wasn't. So it made me think that there's something else to it. Was it some familiar voice just saying you could do better? You can do more? What was it that was playing in my head? What was it? A lot of us will go into, just to give you an example. So we'll go to somebody's office or their home, and we'll see that usually in their office, they'll have placards on the wall with all of their accomplishments, certificates, trophies, diplomas, all these different things. And now, again, I'm not saying that it's not cool to have these things, because sometimes, there is an impression that needs to be created when someone walks into your office to let them know what you've done, what you've accomplished. But more times than not, I find that we have these things in a glass case, protected. We look at them for a minute, we've accomplished them, we've done them, and then we put them away. They no longer hold the value to us because we're on to the next thing. We're looking for another thing to validate ourselves. That becomes a wall or a trophy case of validation, right? That becomes a wall or trophy case of validation if we're not fully conscious of what it is that we've actually accomplished. If we're not literally sitting in the moment and saying, this is really great, like I really feel good that I did that. We're just sometimes piling them on and never really sitting in the emotion and saying, hey, I was enough here. I was solid here. I was great. Like I did really good. And that's important to me. It's important that we do that, because where does it come from? when we feel this feeling of not having been enough or not being enough? Where does this actually come from? And what I find is that it comes from our childhoods, not receiving consistent praise or unconditional acceptance. When we were young, maybe we didn't get the reassurance that mistakes were just a normal part of life. Instead, we were made to believe that mistakes were your fault, you didn't do enough, you weren't good enough, and it made us feel like we have to go out and be perfect to get it done. And that just becomes a modality, that becomes a psychology that we begin to live by, and it puts us in a box because we can't really enjoy something if it's not, to what we perceive, perfect. And it begins to eat away because there's a lot of self-doubt that comes with the fact that it's not perfect. And that can become its own issue, right? That can become its own issue. I was listening to a therapist the other day, and I love her. I listened to her. She's super dope. And she was mentioning things about, people can't keep using emotional traumas as a shield. And I totally respect that. But sometimes we do go overboard, and I respect that sometimes we do go overboard with these shields, but trying to label everything. But that doesn't take away from the fact that some of us are still acting out childhood trauma. Some of us are acting out negative childhood experiences, and we need to stop. We need to find a way to heal that. Because it's truly happening. Like, we can't just disregard all of it just because, right? We have to really accept that some of us are hurting in that way, and we have to do something about it. Break down these 3 things that I've been kind of looking at. Maybe not 3, maybe 2, but just kind of want to touch into it. And it's about maybe understanding perfectionism in a different way than maybe we've been used to. And how can we heal ourselves and possibly stop passing that on to our children? So first thing we need to recognize is, what I've heard some people term, and I've used this term as well, like an invisible yardstick. This is the internalized measuring tool that we carry from childhood. So it's something that we carry, that this is the one that determines when we are good enough to receive love or approval. So it's a yardstick that's been created. And for me, this became crystal clear when my daughter one time came home from a test. She took a test. And she came home with like an 85. My daughter's super smart, right? Great student, But she came home with like an 88 or 85, something like that. I know she had been studying. She was kind of happy, she was proud of herself. And immediately in my head, I said, that's good, but it could have been better. But I caught myself. I didn't say it out loud, but I caught myself thinking that, like, you could have done better. I saw you studying, what did you miss that caused you to get only an 85? But like I said, the thought was there. And I thought about my parents. I thought about my mom and how she would have this standard, and how I was now about to measure my daughter the same way that I was measured, right? And I had to catch myself. And it made me think, the standards by which we were measured as children can become the internal rulers that we use both on ourselves and unconsciously on our children if we don't catch it. So I'm going to repeat that. I want you to understand that. The standards that we were measured by as children can become the measuring stick that we use both on ourselves and unconsciously on our children without even knowing it. And it's sometimes not real. So you got to ask yourself, how do you stop this pattern? What do you do to either be aware of it so that you can be able to circumvent it, stop it, even evaluate whether or not this is the proper time, place to do that, to make that correction, or if it's valid? Maybe you did train enough and you do believe that you should have done a little bit better, and you give that praise in a much more constructive way. You got to ask yourself sometimes, whose voice am I really hearing when I'm judging my performance? When I'm judging my daughter's performance? Who am I listening to? Who are my voices? Whose standard am I actually trying to meet? Most times, for us, maybe high achievers, for us who put out a lot and do a lot of things, that voice is older than who we are. It predates us. It comes from something else. And we have to be mindful of that. Be mindful of that. When we notice that happening, right? When we hear that voice, we have to label it. Oh, there goes my mother again. There goes my father. All right, that's my father's voice. That's not me. That's my father's thing, right? That's my teacher who didn't believe in me or put certain standards on me without acknowledging me being worthy, right? And by naming it, it creates a separation between us and the tool. We now can identify that that's not us. And that's super important, that we are able to separate those things. Because we always have to know that when in childhood, when approval in childhood is tied to achievement, we don't learn the difference between what we do and who we are. When approval in childhood is tied to achievement, we don't learn the crucial difference between what we do, what we accomplish, what we are capable of, and who we actually are. And that there's research in development psychology that shows that children who received primarily performance-based approval are statistically more likely to experience impostor syndrome. So think about that. Psychology shows that children who received primarily performance-based approval, it's not just unconditional approval. It's not just because you're a child and you're beautiful and you're amazing and I love you no matter what. But when you have literally performance-based approval, statistics show that those people are more likely to experience imposter syndrome because they never internalize the message that they are worthy regardless of their accomplishments. That you are worthy regardless of what you accomplish, you are worthy. When you tie it to only what you've been able to accomplish, when you don't accomplish it, you always feel like I'm not enough. Or am I pretending to be enough, but I'm really not enough? You have this imposter syndrome. We got to be careful of that, family. We got to be careful of that. Changing that is imperative. Sometimes it could be as simple as, watching the phrases that we use. I am. Crazy. I am. Damn, I am. I'm messed up. I failed at that. No, I failed at this specific task. Because one is the identity, the other is just an event. When you say, I am a failure, I am stupid. I don't know why I did that. You are identifying as that thing. But if you say, that wasn't the best decision for that event of testing, then it just becomes the event. You can get past that. And psychologically, we need that in order to separate ourselves from identifying as something that we know is just not true when we truly know our worth and value. So this third, this next one, this next principle that I wanted to share was probably one of the most powerful ones. And it's an awareness. It's an awareness point. It's like a generational handoff, right? And this is the moment that we pass our wounds on to the next generation without giving them the opportunity to learn these lessons through a healed persona, right? Learn these things, be these things through a healthy acknowledgement of themselves first. So I was mentioning to you guys that, my son plays football, and he was, out there trying to do his thing. He was out there trying to do his thing, trying to catch the ball, trying to get on the team. I mean, not on the team, on the field for offense, because they usually put him on defense. So he wanted to really play receiver. He wanted to really get out there and be on the offense. And, we've been practicing, and we have been, really working hard. And I could see that he was becoming like increasingly frustrated, like as if it had to be perfect, and it was like, I could see the tears or the frustration welling up in him. And I felt like, oh man, wait a minute. I'm looking at something and I don't like the way this looks. It's something familiar. And I could see a reflection that my unhealed perfectionism was becoming the standard that I was unconsciously setting for him. Because every time I noticed, he would look at me. He would look to see if I was validating what he was doing when he made a mistake. And I had to say to myself, there's a pressure that I'm putting on him based on this standard, this invisible yardstick that I've created, that somehow I inherited from someone. And now I'm putting that same thing on him. So my unhealed perfection becoming a standard that I was unconsciously, because I wasn't doing it consciously, I was unconsciously setting for him, despite my conscious efforts to protect him from this exact pain. I didn't want him to feel this pain. I never wanted him to feel this pain. I love this kid with all my heart. I don't want him to ever feel the pain of not being enough, or feeling he's not accomplishing something that is disappointing me. But in his heart, he feels like he did his best out there, but it's still, he's being held by a standard that I've promoted for him. And I had to really look at that, and I thought about it in that moment, and I said, I got to validate him in a way that has nothing to do with an accomplishment. And then when I came home and I did some research, and children don't learn, and I'm sure everybody knows, from what we say nearly as much as from what we model, what we do, how we act, how we interact. When they see us beating ourselves up over mistakes, oh man, I messed up, blah, blah, blah. When they see us doing that to ourselves, requiring perfection from ourselves, or dismissing the things that we have achieved, like, somebody say, Dad, you got money. And I'm like, I ain't really got no money, And dismissing the true achievement, because I'm okay. Dismissing those achievements, they begin to absorb that as the way they should treat themselves. That's how they should relate to their achievements. And we got to be mindful not to pass that on. We got to be mindful that we are the custodians of this beautiful, unique spirit, this beautiful, unique human being, and protect them at all costs. Protect them at all costs. So I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Let me narrate this differently. Let me try to look at this a little bit differently. Let me just notice that when I'm feeling this, and this is what I expressed to him later, sometimes I see you being really hard on yourself, son. I see you being really hard on yourself, and I want you to give yourself some grace. I want you to tell yourself in that moment when you feel like you're frustrated because you feel like you didn't do it well enough, say to yourself, I notice that I'm being hard on myself right now. I'm going to try again, and I'm going to be patient with this process. I'm going to be patient with myself. I'm going to give myself the grace to know that as long as I did the best that I felt I could do at that moment, it's enough. And I'll try again if need be. But give yourself, in real time, is probably one of the strongest ways that you can break this cycle. No lecture, no talk, no nothing will ever be able to give you this level of release from that. Being able to say, I'm more than this performance. I'm more than my physical ability on this field. My worth is not measured by stats. My worth is measured by my integrity, my humility, my empathy, my love for others, for myself. That's what my worth is tied to. My love for myself, my desire to be a better human being. That's where it really comes from. Yeah. So the truth is, family, is that the awareness necessary to save us, that maybe could have saved us when we were younger, that could maybe save our children, is available to us right now in real time. Every time that we feel the familiar pressure to be perfect, remember, there is a part of you that can see both the performance and the performer as two unique things. They're different. And knows the difference between what you do and who you are. Being aware of that. Being conscious of what you do is not who you are. Who you are is a beautiful specimen of the Most High. A beautiful child of the Most High. A unique spirit on this planet, gifted with things that no one could ever question, take away, or dampen. Knowing that you have a divine purpose to live out. Because beneath the achievements and the failures, beyond all the praise and the criticism, you have always been worthy of love and belonging. You gotta acknowledge it, you gotta know that. This isn't about becoming a different person. This isn't about being somebody different. This is about recognizing the person you've always been, which is a beautiful human being, a beautiful child of the Most High, a unique individual full of life, love, vigor, spirit, energy. It's who you've always been. It's about recognizing that person you've always been beneath the yardsticks, the invisible standards, the impossible standards, and understanding that the next time that you see your child bring home an 88, an 85, a 90, or make a mess of a project, just destroying, or fails at sports and misses the ball, he gets, they passing the ball and he misses it. Be aware. This moment, you have a choice that perhaps your parents didn't have, perhaps you didn't have for yourself. You can now either pass down that standard, that impossible standard, that yardstick, or you could set that shit down. You could set it down once and for all and say, that's not what we're going to be measured by. We're going to be measured by things that are unmeasurable. Love, empathy, grace, humility. Because that's really where the growth is at. It's really where the power is at. It's really where the God-likeness is at, right? That's where your God self is at. Is in understanding those things. That's when you get closer to the Most High. And that choice in that moment, witnessing and choosing, being aware and choosing differently, that's where the healing begins. Not only for yourself, but for your children. That's where the healing begins. Because I know we all want to heal our children. I know that. I know we all want our children to be better. But being better means doing things differently sometimes. It's not just for you, it's not just for them, but it's for the generations that are coming, that they're going to raise, that they're going to talk to. And you give them these kind of talks. So the next time we feel that weight of perfectionism, remember, the most perfect thing that you can do is to be beautifully, lovingly, unapologetically, authentically imperfect. It is okay. Yo, it is okay. Listen to that. The most perfect thing that you can do is to be beautifully, lovingly, authentically, unapologetically imperfect. so that your children could see you in that true light and not know that they need to hold themselves to a standard that you're creating for them based on the model that you're giving them. The greatest gift you can give isn't a legacy of achievement. The greatest gift you can give is not a legacy of achievement. It's the permission to be human. It's the permission to be yourself. Think about that. The greatest gift that you can give is not a legacy of achievement. It's for you to allow a person to be human, be able to understand themselves in that moment and just accept that. That's who I am. And I'm good, I'm quirky, I'm nerdy. Whatever that thing is, let them be that. Without fear of not feeling like they're going to fit in or not be accepted. Because that's a punishment. That's a punishment. It's a punishment. So again, family, as always, I say thank you. I appreciate you for tapping in, riding with me on this journey. Being a part of this journey. Listening to me as I go through this healing process. And hopefully it resonates with you. Or if you know someone else, please, I always ask, like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, comment. Criticism, I take it. You know, just a story that you might want to share or something that you've witnessed in your own life that may tap into this. Please, I ask you to share this with me. Share this with the family because there may be other people that could learn from your experience as well. If you feel you have a story that you'd like to just share, please comment. Say, hey, I would love to be on the podcast. We can make that happen. I would love for you to be on the podcast with me. I would love to be on an episode with somebody that we could really dialogue on what's going on and what we're seeing and what we're feeling. This is super important. You know, if you want to come and sit down, please reach out, put it in the comments, and I'll reach out to you. I always reach out and respond to all the comments. If you want to just add to the discussion, just like I said, tap into the comments. But I appreciate you and I thank you and I ask you just to like, share, and subscribe. Let's push this talk as far as we can. Let's push this talk as far as we can. Again, peace, love, healing. I appreciate you for tapping in. Thank you for watching another episode of Sins of the Father. Blessings.